Good evening, and thank you for joining Cure Childhood Cancer for our web-based learning event for patient families affected by childhood cancer. Cure Childhood Cancer is a nonprofit organization dedicated to conquering childhood cancer through funding targeted research and supporting patients and their families. As a way to support families, Cure has launched a webinar series that will address the unique needs of families affected by childhood cancer. Please check our website, www.curechildhoodcancer.org, regularly to learn more about upcoming web-based learning. My name is Karen McCarthy, Patient Family Services Manager at Cure Childhood Cancer, and I have the pleasure of being your host this evening. Before we begin, please note all incoming audio will be muted for the duration of the webinar. If you are using a computer camera, you can stop video of yourself by unclicking the camera icon next to your name in the participant panel. To remove the video box from your screen, hover your mouse over the down arrow on the left of the video box and click. If you are viewing from a computer, take this time to enlarge your viewing screen by clicking on the full screen button. You are welcome to ask questions during the webinar. However, questions will be answered at the conclusion of the webinar. To ask a question, type it into the Ask tab of your Q&A panel located on the bottom right of your screen. Lastly, to hide the panel taking up the right part of your screen, simply click on the Participants tab in the top right panel and it should collapse. For this webinar, Cure has partnered with Laurie Hooker, licensed clinical social worker. Laurie has been in clinical practice for 23 years. Her clinical experience includes work at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta for the past 17 years and was employed at Oakland Children's before that. Laurie has also provided contract therapy and consultant work in trauma and grief, both in Georgia and in California. Laurie currently provides contract work to Kate's Club and Camp Sunshine, working with families who have lost a child. Laurie, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Karen. I'm so glad that I could make this work out and that I'm able to do this for you guys this evening. So I'm just so glad you guys came. It's really difficult, and I know it takes a lot of courage to talk about these subject matters because it's also about vulnerability and just about the experience of having to think about these things when it's really hard to do. So I think what I want to start out with and just talk a little bit about is you are probably in a survival mode. Depending on where you are in your journey, you could be, it could be very fresh or it could be maybe several years. But wherever you are, it's still a journey of survival. It is not, there's not a guide for how well you're doing or how not well you're doing. Part of this is that this is about survival. And it's survival to the point of reinvestment, when you can reach a point of reinvestment. So be kind and patient with yourself. I'm going to say that a couple times during this presentation, but it's incredibly important for you to be kind and gentle with yourself during a point of survival. We don't look to people who are surviving to be emotionally perfect or not to have moments of true vulnerability. We're looking for authenticity. So again, a heartfelt welcome. For whatever you're going through, whatever brought you to seek out this presentation, I am glad you're here. This moment is for you. This moment is alone for you to experience and to react to whatever this brings up for you. Your journey is your own, but you are not alone, and this is for you. Use only what is helpful. So some of the things I might say this evening might not be helpful to you, and some of them might be. So take only what you can use, and I hope that it helps and benefits you. So my hope for today is to offer support and validation for the intense difficulty and coping after losing a child, to help you develop a strategy for managing the holidays with compassion for yourself, and those you love, to offer concrete suggestions for how to keep your child's story very much a part of the season, no matter where you are in your experience, to leave you more prepared for the holiday season with encouragement, acceptance, and understanding. So this next slide, Love Lives On. You know, the very early thinking on grief and trauma was helping people move to a point of acceptance. We've learned a lot in the last 10 to 12 years about how acceptance can imply agreement, and no one agrees with losing their child. No one agrees with what has happened to you. So our goal isn't to move anybody into a form of acceptance or to move you in any direction whatsoever. One of the things about it is it's about collective bonds, the enduring bond of the relationship you had with your child. And no matter where you are, love lives on. This experience goes on and on. That connection goes on and on. So there is no acceptance that you need to move to. What you are working on is just taking care of yourself, surviving, and also maybe at some day and at some point reinvesting in the experience of living. So what I like to say in that time of journey or in that time of survival, you are really just going on one moment, one wave at a time. Because as many of you know, as you've experienced loss, it's really pretty unpredictable. And one of the things is it doesn't just come and go and be in a linear process. It's not really a process at all. Grief forever changes how you experience events, smells, music, relationships, almost everything in ways that can be difficult to predict. That's so true. So, you know, you can be walking along in a grocery store and see an item that reminds you of your child, and then you're just losing it right there in the grocery store. That's okay. And sometimes that's just where you are. And what I'm really trying to promote for you is a sense of authenticity, because that experience is where you are in that moment. And what I was saying is you're really just trying to survive this one moment, one wave at a time. And those are going to come in an unpredictable fashion, but I'm hoping that you can take that and be, and like I said, gentle and concerning towards yourself, and to really talk to yourself in ways that you would talk to somebody who's going through your own experience. So authenticity is like a pressure valve. We have to give it our attention and listen to our hearts, even when the vulnerability is excruciating. Otherwise, it comes out in ways that we may not want it to. So, you know, sometimes when we have to stuff it down, or we feel like we need to stuff it down all day, there are moments where authenticity is going to catch up with us. So if you are having that kind of day where you're crying in the grocery store or crying in the car and you're doing those things, let yourself be authentic. It's part of the experience. And, you know, there's no should. Don't should on yourself or anyone else. Your goal is to be as authentic as you can be in the times that you can be there. Of course, there may be times where you have to hold it all together and pull it all together, but your goal is not to live in that moment, because that moment just doesn't feel real. And, you know, being real is how you heal. So that brings up the topic of holidays and difficult days. Because there is nothing more authentic than the experience of the loss of your child and also having to cope with it around times of traditions and rituals. After the loss of a child, previously anticipated holidays and important days are oftentimes a source of pain, sadness, and dread. Traditions and festivities become bittersweet and difficult to navigate emotionally. The anxiety about how these days may feel in the weeks leading up to them can be equally distressing at times. From my experience in talking with families, a lot of times the days and weeks leading up to holidays are far worse than the holidays themselves. The anticipatory grief and the struggle to know what that experience is going to be like can bring on a sense of dread. So that's one of the things, is to recognize that your experience in feeling those feelings is highly normal. So Rituals, traditions, and bonds. That's what holidays are. They're rituals and traditions. Rituals and traditions are part of what ties us together as a family. From our very earliest memories, from our families of origin, we have experiences where we are commemorating holidays in a way that will last us a lifetime. The memories last us a lifetime. Our bonds to those people we love are most prominently on display when those rituals and traditions are honored. So going back to those early memories that you created with your child, going back to the early memories you created in your own family, it all matters in the sense of that it's all a reminder of what's missing. And it can feel like a loudspeaker blaring, that this is missing, and I have these rituals and traditions that don't have the meaning that they used to have. Again, being kind and gentle to yourself, you're doing the best you can with what you have in the present moment. This is a reminder that that loudspeaker is very hard to turn down sometimes, and so sometimes you just have to turn it down within yourself and let yourself just hear yourself and be gentle. When we talk about navigating a path through pain, what we're talking about is being purposeful in our actions. When we're purposeful in our actions towards something we're fearful about or anxious about, it reduces our anxiety and it reduces our amount of trauma that goes along with it. Thinking and planning for how that experience might be allows us to have the space to be what we are in the moment when we get there. A ton of research on grief and trauma has really identified for us a three-step strategy for negotiating the complex society and self-imposed expectations around the holidays. And they are choose, communicate, and compromise. Choose. So choice is really about choosing what works for you and what works for your families. What do you want to be a part of? Who do you want to be with? What do you want to do? Sometimes a lot of questions can feel stressful at times too. So don't feel like you have to answer these in any rapid fashion or stick with the answer that you first come up with, but it's to start this is to start you on that journey of purposefulness in regard to managing your grief and trauma around the holidays. So it's asking those questions. What is meaningful about that day for you? You know, the meaning changes over time. What was previously meaningful may not have meaning for you now. So it's about really focusing on what your thoughts are about what is important for the now. It doesn't even have to be for what will be important in the future. It's what is important in the now. A meaningful way to include your child is also important for that day. Light a candle, save a place, have a gift, tell a story. One of the things about it is you may not be able to anticipate how you feel, and that's okay too. So you might have all of those ready and then choose when the day comes around. And when I talk about people, I like to talk about wells. So we all have our own emotional strengths and our own emotional well-being, and sometimes we have water for other people to drink, and sometimes we don't. And then we also have people in our lives that are never wells that we can drink water from. They just aren't there. They don't understand our experience. They don't give us what we need. And so sometimes we have to find a canteen to carry with us. Sometimes it's spending time with somebody who gives you a better sense of yourself and allows you to talk freely about the loss of your child and gives you the strength to go on for maybe that mother-in-law or that sister-in-law that's insensitive, or for a friend that you really want to still connect with but doesn't seem to get it. It's finding the wells to drink from before you have to experience those other folks who maybe not be able to give you what you need in your time of loss. This is a good advice not just for the holidays, but for any time. Know your wells and know where you can get a drink. So another essential portion of surviving the holidays is communicating. This is incredibly hard to do when a family is grieving. We don't grieve as individuals. We grieve as individuals and not as a family. So we all have different experiences and different thoughts and processes and different feelings that we're going through, and sometimes that can break down our communication modes with each other. So I like to say, if you need to communicate with the outside sources, you can lay the groundwork in an email, a holiday card, or through a friend. You can tell people what they can expect. Sometimes that sounds harsh because it's asking the grieving person to do the hard work of letting people know what's expected. But here's the thing is, if you can do a little bit of groundwork that makes your experience a little bit better around the holidays, it may be worth your while. So if you're sending out that holly card or talking with a friend who's asking, all of our friends are asking what they can do for you around the holiday, it's a good idea to follow up, to say, it'd be really helpful if we could do stories or tell stories about John, because I really miss him and I really think that would be really helpful for us. And also just to kind of put the awkwardness for other people aside for them, because you benefit from that. I hate that you have to do that, and I hate that we live in a society where you have to do that, but sometimes giving that pre-communication allows you to not have those really tense moments on the day of the holiday. So again, you're going to hear this talk about being authentic. So being real about how you really feel. Sometimes we really give into our own expectations of ourselves and what others expect of us, and sometimes that also can break down the communication within the family. I know that he really needs me to be strong in this moment, or he really needs this, or I really need that. But part of that is to say, for this moment, this is all that I can be. This is all that I have to give. And then for you guys to talk about that. I like to say also give people permission. You need permission to be you, and they need permission to be themselves. So if that person is an introvert and that's where the way they're experiencing their grief, we have to allow for that too. They may not feel that they can, do a lot of activities or be part of a larger group. So we have to give them permission to be that person. Ask for flexibility for each other. Let each other know this is where I need the space to maybe decide on the day whether I'm going to use a candle or give a gift or tell a story. I don't know how I'm going to feel. So can we be flexible around that experience? That's one of the things that communication really does for us, is it allows us to plan ahead. Ask for and give space for alone time. Again, some people just need that space. Don't need to be part of a social environment, and that is important. Because sometimes when we push people beyond that, then it all breaks down. And that's where we can get into situations where we're inauthentic and we can say and do and act in ways that we wouldn't want to. Ask for and allow yourself to be helped. Find those people in your life, those full wells that want to be there for you, that want to give you things that can help you get through. Ask them to do some of your shopping, or to, take your child to an event, your surviving children to an event. It's really about what matters in that moment and how you could best ask someone to help you, and allowing for yourself to be helped. It really does make a huge difference in your ability to not feel overwhelmed around the holidays. And finally, and most important, is compromise. Compromising is an agreement between you guys that everybody is struggling. And, no one has been through what you've been through before. So you don't really have that. It's all new for everybody in the family. So one of the things about it is give yourself permission and give others permission to maybe struggle in the moment and to not know what's expected and to not know how they're going to feel. Compromise allows you to kind of recognize the experience of those around you and allows you to have them experience your experience too. You can ask for input, honor each other's feelings, make room for concessions when possible, find ways to give each person in the family a role in whatever activities you choose, and be kind and patient with yourself, and it will be easier to endure the empty wells. If you are in a space where you are not making yourself have a ton of expectations and demanding yourself to be different than you are, it's a lot easier to put up with people who are going to say things that are insensitive and can be difficult. And that's really good advice, is to sometimes just prepare yourself emotionally for that well that's not going to be there, and know that I need to take better care of myself in the moments when I'm interacting with this person. So in honoring your child around the holidays, I like to remind people that nothing is still something. Sometimes you just can't do anything. You just feel like you can't put something together, you can't organize something, you can't make that activity. You are still recognizing your child. In the absence of not being able to do something, it's still a recognition of that child's memory and your experience. You're honoring them in the best way that you know how in that moment. Again, you have to be gentle with yourself and not should on yourself. You might feel that at times, but sometimes you need to set those feelings aside and just say, nothing is something, and I am still doing that. I'm still doing nothing, but it's still cool. Set aside time. So one of the things about it is we get so busy around the holidays that we really don't set aside time to really just recognize and feel the experience of what we've been through. So one of the things that I say is take a walk, spend a little time before bed each evening just contemplating and thinking and just trying to figure out what works for you and how honoring your child and what traditions best honor your child. Get inspiration. Go to Pinterest. Look at things that help to, what other people have done in order to honor their child around the holidays. There's a lot of things out there. There are a lot of activities and crafts and things that can give you inspiration for how you would want to honor your child at the holidays. Involve everyone. Do a family meeting. Have an experience in which you talk to other people and say, hey, this is what I was thinking. What were you thinking we would do around the holidays? Again, it's that purposeful planning. It's choosing and it's making sure that you have what you need for everyone to feel a part of that experience. And one of the things that I really like to remind people is to be open to the unexpected. You don't know what you're going to experience. You don't know what you're going to feel, and you don't know what the people around you are going to feel. So you have to be open to the unexpected and to allow some of those waves to be ridden. Again, it can be, certain things can trigger different reactions in people, and it's hard to predict. It's hard to predict for yourself, and it's hard for those people to predict for themselves as well. And then I used like to say you can mix the new with important traditions. So you're adding something new that either feels like a commemoration, like an angel tree, or lighting a candle. They have these really cool, and I'll show you, I have a few pictures in the end, these really cool lanterns that you can make that have just our commemorative lantern that you can have every year. But one of the things about it, that's a new tradition that you can blend into your old and more formulated traditions from your past. Follow the intense with what feels less intense. So maybe if you guys do a sharing book or a moment of silence or an experience in which people tell a story, it's good to follow that up with something that's less intense. So maybe not doing back-to-back commemorative activities. Allow people to have a little bit of recovery time. Everybody needs that to make it through the difficult days of the holidays. So featured in this picture is the Winston Donaldson family, and in the picture that you'll see in the frame, that's Jack. And Anna Winston Donaldson wrote a book called Rare Bird, and I think it's a really beautiful, amazing book that shares the experience of the loss of a child. Jack was killed in a tragic accident, and his family has done much to think about and be purposeful in the ways that they commemorate Jack. But on that first holiday, I read Anna Winston Donaldson's quote, and she says, when I faced that first holiday, she said, nothing is fine. I don't want a candle. I want my son. And I think that you have to be able to recognize for yourself that no matter what you plan or no matter what you do, that those feelings are still very real and very, very overwhelming. And allow yourself the grace to experience those feelings, knowing that you have support and care around you. She also said by doing this, by recognizing and facing the intensity of that revulsion of having a holiday right after the death of her son, she was eventually able to move to a point where she could be grateful for what time she had with Jack, even if it was just for the 12 years that she had him. She felt like being able to not put the pressure on herself to have whatever people were giving her and the expectations she had around the holiday helped her transition that. So I love this concept of holding space. So holding space means coming together and being with each other without the expectations of any societal rules. So sometimes you just need to be in a collective. You just need to allow each other to go through the experience however it shapes itself. So that's really observing versus celebrating. So sometimes it's hard to celebrate a holiday, but you can observe it, and you can hold space for each other in that moment, knowing that probably everyone is struggling. It gives you the opportunity to serve and be of service to others, and for them to be of service to you, to support you on your journey. And that's a really important part of this, is being able to look for spaces where you can have that time together to just nurture yourself without any expectation. So, and then we can talk about some more concrete ways to do that. If you're talking about observation of that holiday, you can put a place at the table or light a candle, as I said, share a story through tears, because how could you not? And then place a book in a quiet space and let family members share a memory. And then a memory puzzle, and I'm going to show you a picture of that. So you can get these at Michael's, and one of the things is you can get them in any size that you want. So if you have a very small family, they can be puzzle pieces of 6 or 8. And if you have don't even have a family that big, they can do 2. Or you can get really large puzzles if you have a large family and other people want to contribute to your memory puzzle. And one of the things about it is you can frame this, you can keep this, and it can be a measure of your journey. And this is one of the things that I really love about it is they can be as creative as they want, and they can also have just a personal moment to write that, without having to say these things out loud, because sometimes that's hard for people. But this is one way that you could do a commemoration or a memory. Yeah, and then I took a few photos of some different ideas here for you. So at the top left-hand corner is a candlelight service, a candlelight sing-along that just a family put together to commemorate the loss of their child. And in the middle is that lantern that I was talking about a little bit earlier, and it has a whole dedication to the person on the outside of the lantern. And whenever they gather, whenever the family gathers, whatever holiday or whatever time where they're observing a ritual in which the person used to participate, they can bring out this lantern, and it just allows the people to know that this is that this person's presence is continuing in our life. And then, of course, on the right, we have some ornaments that different family members made that could be hung on a tree. And then on the left, again, back on the left, is an angel tree, which is a specific tree that's put in an observable area of the room that has ornaments and collectives and memories that are specific to the child that's been lost. And then for those of us who celebrate the Jewish faith, this is you can do menorah candles that are colored. You can do any variety of color candles that honor your person. Sometimes you can get candles that have the person's name on them. There's a couple different mechanisms for celebrating during the course of Hanukkah as well. And then you'll see down here on the left-hand side the blue Christmas service. So sometimes a traditional Christmas service can be highly emotional, but there's more and more recognition about the difficulty of grief around the holidays, and more faith traditions are honoring the families who have a significant loss around the holidays by offering blue Christmas services, which allow families to be in the presence of other people whose holidays are now bittersweet or forever bittersweet, and it gives them the opportunity to have a shared experience. I really like this one in the middle too, which is the individual glass ornaments, and you can do all kinds of different things in the middle of them. It's a picture of the child, and then it could be something that was important to the child in them. And then also you can do ones with messages in them. You can put, everyone can write a message and put it in there. It's really a totally creative process for any of the things that you might want to do. And then if you'll see down in here in the bottom, this is a family who's chosen to volunteer for the holidays. Because sometimes refocusing our emotional loss and anxiety on the needs of others and recognizing that there are others at the time of holidays who are struggling as well can help us feel a little bit more part of the world. So one of the things people ask me about sometimes is about the idea of escaping. And what I mean by escaping is, you know, we were just thinking about, you know, going to Disney World or, you know, just going to the mountains and not doing anything. And so I think, well, that is, there are some thoughts that can be good, and I just always like people to remember a few things. That you have to make sure that everybody in the family is in agreement. People have gone through a significant change, and sometimes holding on traditions can feel balancing and centering, and so we have to have everyone sort of in agreement about that. A change of scenery can be good, but prepare yourself for the fact that wherever you go, those emotions go with you, and they can sneak up on you in the most difficult places and times. Because we remember that the waves hit us when we least expect them, and if we're trying to run from the waves, they unfortunately follow with us. And then align your getaway plan with an objective. So if you're choosing Disney World, maybe it was because that was a special place for your child, or you're choosing the beach because it was a special place for your child. And it allows you to celebrate the holiday in a different way that truly commemorates your child without truly trying to escape the experience of the loss. And that is one of the things that I say is most important, is trying to align your getaway with an objective, making sure that it fits in the paradigm of your child's experience. And I think that lessens the sneak attack of your emotions sometimes. Communicate your choices to others who might be affected. So sometimes, you know, we want to leave town, but we have extended family who are concerned and worried and really want to be present with us to support us. But if you communicate well enough what your choices are and why you're choosing them, I think family members can support you in that decision-making and also encourage you. There's nothing like having more intense guilt feelings and negativity around something that you're already not looking forward to. So I think, again, communication is a huge part of being purposeful in your holiday planning. If you're communicating what your needs are and communicating to the people around you, I think it goes so much easier. And I always say, even wherever you are, no matter how you go, wherever you go, build in time for a remembrance moment or activity. Just plan for that specific moment in which you're going to recognize where you are in this journey. One of the things I think people don't, or maybe don't recognize or feel maybe in the society, is the difficulty of facing a new year. As we talk about holidays, I think for some people, New Year's is the hardest of the holidays because of the difficulty of starting a new year without our loved one. So recognize the significance for yourself. Know and appreciate that this might be a difficult day for you, and make a plan. Sometimes that plan can include being surrounded by people or having time alone, whatever feels good to you. Know that you can plan for it and try to include it in your planning that you're giving to the other attention to the other holidays, but making sure you're including New Year's in that as well. Know your limits and honor them, because it's hard to sometimes resist the pressure you receive from other family members to go above and beyond and do other things. But I think this is a really good time for self-reflection, and New Year's is a time for self-reflection and self-nurturing to build yourself going forward for that new year. And again, can't say it enough, communicate. Let people know what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what your needs are. And look for opportunities to honor your child when you're up to it. So if you're setting goals for the new year or thinking about new goals for your year, think about ways that you're going to honor your child going forward, and that might make that transition into the new year a little bit easier. And then finally, seek out and accept support. Let people know that you're anticipating this being a difficult day, and people will show up and support you and help you in the ways that you need them to. So this is one of the things that I like to talk to people about too, is the fatigue that grief is. It's a kind of tired that sleep can't fix. It's your survival. You're surviving, and the survival is exhausting. It's just like fighting, tigers or trying to march up a mountain. There is just a perpetual journey that goes along with being a grieving person. And one of the things about it is recognizing that rest is incredibly important, and that sometimes that sleep doesn't fix everything, but it also gives you some sense of reconnection and renewal. So sleep when you can, rest when you can, and just know that you can make it through this one moment at a time. So, as we said, surviving is exhausting, and remembering these things can help you, that you are not alone. As much as you can, honor your body, your mind, and rest. Seek out help and support, and accept it when it is offered. Know the boundaries in isolating. Sometimes you need alone time. Sometimes you need time for reflection and thinking about things, and just being able to not have to interact. So, know the boundaries on that, because sometimes when we're over-isolating, it can lead to long-term health consequences. So being able to look at that and balance that out with doing things that maybe require you to push yourself just a little bit. Now, should you feel guilty if you can't? No. But pushing just a little bit to make yourself get out of those boundaries of just being by yourself all the time, if that's something that you're even able to do if you don't have other children, that is a huge piece of it, is looking at how much you're isolating and how much you're able to interact with others. Learn some mindfulness techniques, which is better than a nap sometimes. Practicing some meditation or mindfulness techniques, because sometimes meditation doesn't really work. Mindfulness can be a huge tribute to giving your space to honor the moment that is, as opposed to living in the past or living in the future, which both seem equally painful at times. So just being present in that very moment where you're safe and you're comfortable can be incredibly nurturing and to help fight that exhaustion. So walking. So sometimes you might not feel like going back to your regular exercise routine or doing that, but simply walking and being out in the woods or being out on a path can help alleviate some of those anxieties and stressors. And then cry, write, create, and cherish, meaning whatever it takes for you to have connection or renewal in the world, you should be trying to move some of those things forward if you can. Shoulded you, which I regret. But if you feel up to it, you can do any of those things, and they're going to give you the experience of feeling connected. So as I conclude, I just want to wish you peace of mind and love on your heart, and be, as I said all throughout this presentation, be kind and gentle with yourself at the holidays. It's a difficult time, and look for your wells full of water that can support you and nourish you during this experience, and I wish you well.
So at this time, participants will have the opportunity to ask Laurie questions. If you're viewing the webinar from your computer, you can ask a question by typing it into the Ask tab of the Q&A panel located on the bottom right of your screen. All questions can be viewed by all the attendees unless you change the recipient to Host on your Ask tab. If you're viewing the webinar from a mobile device, you can ask a question by tapping the 3 dots at the bottom of the application. Choose Q&A and then type your question. Questions will be read aloud and then answered. So this concludes our webinar on grief and the holidays. This webinar will be housed on the CURE website at www.curechildhoodcancer.org for future reference. Thank you and have a good evening.